Now your host, an advocate for the people and our Constitution, Denise Mraz.
Oh, KKV land, this is Denise Mraz with Vegas Views, promoting peace through constitutional truth, and we're here with Jonathan Friedrich for Assembly District 10. You were able to join us today.
My pleasure. Thank you for inviting me.
So you're running for Assembly 10.
Yes, I am.
And this is your third time you said you're running?
Fourth time.
Fourth time. Tell us about your run.
Well, it's a very diverse area, and they've gerrymandered the district. It almost looks like the state of Texas. And I happen to bring a map with me.
So you're below the 95 there, and it borders the 15.
Actually, there's a little piece that goes above the 95.
Mm-hmm.
It goes as far as the 15, Interstate 15 on the east side, and over here. And then it goes as far south as Desert Inn, and one small little area, it drops down below it, and it goes as far west as Rainbow.
Mm-hmm. It does look like the Texas map.
Yes.
It really does.
That's the best description I can make.
Well, you've lived there a long time.
18 years.
And you are known for being a non-paid lobbyist in Carson City on the issue of HOA corruption.
Not only HOA corruption, but trying to get legislation passed that will protect homeowners and not enrich the coffers of the HOA industry, which is very, very powerful, and it's pretty much driven by an organization called the Community Institution or Institute, and they have no concern about the homeowner.
Now, you've served as a commissioner on that, the
Common
Community
Interest Community Commission,
Right.
which is a state agency under the Office of the Ombudsman Real Estate Division.
But that's not, I'll call it unique to Nevada. There's one of those in every state.
I don't know. I doubt it.
Oh, so it is unique to Nevada.
It's pretty unique. I believe there are ombudsmen in other states, but I don't know about a commission. A lot of them are overseen by the attorney generals or the agencies, consumer protection agencies.
Now, let me understand this. So you bought a house in Rancho Bel Air.
In 2003, I purchased this house that was in terrible rundown condition because I was moving away from Long Island, New York, where the taxes had reached $24,100 a year. And I said, enough is enough. We had supposedly the best schools in the United States.
Allegedly.
But at what cost? And I said, this can't go on forever. I'm working to support this school system and the village, and I was looking for a place that was much more reasonable. I was afraid of Florida because of the rain, the mold, the humidity, and the bugs.
And the hurricanes.
And the hurricanes. Don't leave them out of the equation. So a friend of mine suggested I come to Las Vegas. Now, I had been here a number of times for long weekends. I had been working in Salt Lake City. I was a general contractor, and I was building there. And I'd come here just to get away for 2 days and enjoy the buffets before the coronavirus took hold here. And but I never thought of living here.
Sure. Keep going.
Anyhow, so in 2002, I came out here house hunting, couldn't find anything, made 3 trips, and then finally, I think it was in December of '02, I found the house, and then I wound up negotiating, and in February, I actually purchased it. The house was unlivable in the condition that it was, so it required extensive renovation, which was finally completed by October of 2003. And I wasn't even living in the house at the time. So,
But you didn't know that you were starting on a journey that would last as long as it did and was as expensive as it was. Can you tell us about that? So this all started with a check that was written from
first,
the camp.
going back to the closing, my title company that did not do their job. They were totally incompetent, because they should have told me that even though the house was behind a gate, it was not in the HOA.
Oh, so it had probably been included in the gated community, but
It had been built before
Right.
the gate
yes.
was created,
Yeah.
bought. There was an original owner who developed 33 homes. They were on city streets. The sales were not going well, and another developer came along and bought the adjoining property. It was originally 40 acres, it was a railroad yard. And this other developer, we'll call him Developer 2, petitioned 3 homeowners in Unit 1, that's where I bought, and got them to sign this petition. He took it to the city of Las Vegas, who then agreed to make the streets private and put up a gate and a gatehouse. So, in 2010, this second developer sent out a letter to all the homeowners in Unit 1,
Which you were a part of.
which my house is located in, telling them a lie. He committed fraud. And he said that you are now in an HOA. Well, all but about 4 or 5 people in Unit 1 agreed. Those 4 or 5 people said, no, we did not buy in a HOA,
Because
and we want no part of you.
You know, people that don't, like, I lived in an HOA for a while. Now I'm not in an HOA, but people don't understand the amount of laws and rules that go along with an HOA. And essentially, the HOA lobby, and I'll call it the legal structure of HOAs here in Nevada, it's very much against the homeowner.
It's not only in Nevada, but it's across America. There are about 63 million people in America
Living in an
that
HOA.
have given up, and this is frightful. People have no idea that they gave up their civil rights under the United States Constitution when they purchase a condo or in a homeowners association.
No kidding.
They are more, these HOA boards are more powerful than state or municipal governments.
Well, was it the CICC that made them this way, or how did this evolve? Because obviously, until you bump up against something like this, which is kind of like a glass wall, you're all happy, you find these fantastic properties, you think that you are living in your dream home, and it becomes an absolute nightmare because you find out that you have no civil liberties, you have no rights.
And you are subjected to the tyranny, of a board. It can be a 3-member board, it can be 5, it can be 7. And most of the time, these people get on the board, they are on a power trip.
Oh, yeah.
And they like to flex their muscle and show the homeowners, I'm now the boss. You're going to do what we say. And there was a gentleman in Colorado who was a retired investigative journalist, and he ran afoul of a board. It was over a ramp that he was going to build in a brand new house.
Oh, for a handicap ramp?
But because his wife was in the early stages of MS.
Oh, my.
And the board said, no, we don't want this ramp, and we don't want gimps living here. This
It's
individual
outrageous.
is a name by the name of Ward Lucas, and he wrote a book called Neighbors at War, and it discusses that and a lot of other horror stories.
About HOAs.
I
and the
myself am in the process of writing a book called Fraud at Rancho Bel Air.
corruption. Oh,
And it tells the story of the inception of moving here to the time I got my court fees, of which the judge cut them in half. I should say my attorney fees. The case rambled on for over 4 years, the courts here.
and just think about all your personal time, all your strife, and everything that goes along with that besides the money. So you were telling me a little bit about that, and then that's part of your platform for your political activities, that you want to run for assembly. Let me just go through a couple of the things that you told me, which I'm just absolutely appalled at. That, and folks, if you're out there and thinking about a lawsuit, in Nevada, if you file a lawsuit and the other side offers you, it's called offers of judgment. If
That's
they
correct.
make an offer to settle and you reject it, then you're liable to pay
you
their
could be
fees
paying their legal fees
and your own.
plus your own. I mean, it's outrageous.
That's totally outrageous. That means that there is no judiciary due process, because then there's no ability for you to bring forth your case.
The purpose of this offer of judgment is to force litigants to settle and reduce the number of cases that go to trial. In my own situation, I won the
It's unbelievable.
initial phase, and then we went to trial. It was an 8-day trial, and I won there. And then the HOA was not happy, so they took it to the Nevada Supreme Court, where they got their butts kicked in a 5-2 decision in my favor, denying them their claim that the statute of limitations had run out because they had committed fraud.
But to me, again,
And that's what the jury found, by the way.
a jury is, somebody who are our peers, and we would expect them to just look at I'll call it the simple facts, that you didn't even find out about this until long
10 years
after.
later.
Right.
10
So
years after I bought the house is when this whole thing
Right.
surfaced.
And I mean, how can they make any claim that you had, let the time pass because you didn't know and they didn't tell you, and there was no,
That-
free and open information?
In the eyes of the defense, it was my responsibility to go to the recorder's office of the county and search the records. Well, folks,
You paid a
I
title
paid
company.
a title company for that, and they
Right.
fell down.
Yes.
And they let me down. They did not do their job.
And let's look at I'll just call it the common family that's moving here to Las Vegas. Would they have the legal wherewithal within their family to even look at these documents and assess this? I mean, probably very few people, maybe 1 or 2%. If you have a legal background, if you have somebody in your family that can help you with it. Otherwise, I'll call it your everyday Jane and Joe public. There's no way for them to even know this.
What the defense attorney for the association said was, it was my responsibility, since these were public records, that I should have gone down to the recorder's office and researched it and been aware of it. Well, I wasn't.
But obviously you're a very astute person. I can tell that by, talking with you. And, a few days ago we met and I heard your story. I heard your story when you were in a fantastic interview with Make Nevada Red. And I'm so happy that they selected you for Assembly 10 to come in and, state your platform and hopefully elevate you so that you're running till November because you're an independent candidate.
That's correct. I have no primary. And what I would like very much to see is court reform. And the other issue dealing with the courts is, in my case, I ran up legal bills of $270,000.
But you were only awarded half.
But the judge at the end said, no, too much. The jury only awarded me $15,000 give back on the fees that I had paid over the years. And my attorney warned me. He said, the cost of the legal fees versus what the jury awarded you is not balanced.
Mm-hmm.
And he said the judge is not going to give you $270,000. He gave me $135,000. And the only recourse I had was to take it to the Nevada Supreme Court, which would have cost me another $20,000 and another year.
I liked your idea of the court reform, so I had made a note here. The plaintiff gets all their money back in your court reform scenario, and then the judge must award all legal costs and fees.
Correct. This way, there is no playing games. Right now, the statute says may. Now, the judge could have said, I don't have to give you anything, and I'm not going to. And I would have been out $330,000.
You know,
it's unfair. It's outrageous.
When you hear these things, and I mean, I'm hearing it now for the second time, I'm still shocked. I'm absolutely shocked that the joy and the pride of your home ownership and the experience here or living here has been a horrible nightmare.
It was quite a challenge. I spent a whole year, at either the recorder's office in the county or at the office of, trying to think of their name. It was the City of Las Vegas Planning Department.
Mm-hmm.
And I've got to tell you, I was so impressed by the documents they had that I was able to walk into the trial with 600 pages of documents. The defense came in with 0. They couldn't defend their position. The jury was overwhelmed by all of this.
Mm-hmm.
All they wanted to see is an end. And it dragged on. It took 2 days just to select the jurors. Because most people in Vegas live in HOAs.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember one juror kept saying when he was interviewed at the onset, well, when you buy into an HOA, you've signed a contract, and you have to do what the contract says. Needless to say, he was ousted.
Mm-hmm.
And
this is really a civil liberties violation, too.
It's a violation of your constitutional
Yes.
rights.
Of all of them. I mean,
where was the due process? There was none.
There was none. And the fact that so many of our laws, and you brought this up, so when people look at the Nevada Revised Statutes, which, let's just look at laws. Laws are I'll call it an external obligatory system that lives outside the moral authority that we all should be under. Because we don't have the moral authority and we're living in an amoral society, they have created thousands.
Endless
NRS statutes. But
just like this offer of judgment.
Mm-hmm. And the statutes, though, say, one thing is that they often say, subject to regulations. So when you pass the law, the regulations could change minutely.
Or they use the word may.
Shall, may, or must. And that's the other part of this. So I did a little project a couple of years ago because I was looking into the power of county commissioners. And the NRS has one sentence regarding the power of commissioners, that they can do whatever they want.
Doesn't surprise me.
So our county commissioners are actually as powerful as the governor. And when you have 7 of them together, then they can do anything they want.
And make a lot of trouble and expense.
Mm-hmm. And so, I think our whole system needs to be overhauled. If you did win Assembly 10, how would you go about implementing political reform and court reform? Because it's such a huge, that's like saying it's a herd of elephants.
You would first have to build a rapport with other legislators so they will support you.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't have the other legislators' support in the initial phase of putting together a BDR, which is a bill draft request, which goes before a committee, which then gets I don't want to say torn apart or shredded, but I can remember one
Beat up.
beat up is a good word. I can remember one former state senator saying, after he presented the bill and explained it, he said to the rest of the committee, "Go at it."
Oh, jeez. Sick the pit bulls on them.
Yeah.
Oh, boy.
So if you don't have that support up in Carson City, you're doomed. Or if they don't like you or they don't like your bills, you'll never see them go to committee.
Do you think one strategy is to start a ballot initiative on this or a referendum on this subject?
It's very time-consuming. It's very expensive. And they've had a number of ballot initiatives that have failed because they did something wrong. And they make it very difficult so that hopefully you will do something wrong and they can knock it out of the box during the process of review.
I came across that a couple years ago. I worked on the SJR 14 initiative. So just to folks out there that aren't familiar with it, it was a first round for ballot initiative to triple property tax in Nevada.
Which are very low currently.
The process, though, was to triple property tax to cover up for the looming, which was coming at us then but is here now on our doorstep, the $1.8 billion shortage of the Allegiant Stadium. We're currently $1.8 billion short, and it's growing every day. One of the reasons is the waterway underneath the stadium was, some people are saying it was overlooked purposefully by the state engineer. Other people are saying that he knew about it the whole time. But if you know about the Mandalay Bay 25, 30 years ago when it was built, there was a huge water table under it. And they had installed 55 computerized jacks underneath the whole Mandalay Bay so that it's always leveling itself by a computerized process. Secondly, every second it's checked. And then that is for the fact that it's not built on solid foundation. It's actually built with a river running under it. That same waterway runs under the stadium. So early on in the project, and this never got any press, but I have the documents, that over $350 million in overruns were part of the stadium development in the first 3 months of the project, because when they drilled, they ran into these underground waterways. So, but they knew that they were there. They had to know that they were there. And
but they ignored them.
They ignored them, and many people are saying that they did it on purpose. Because if this would have come out originally, the bill for the stadium would have been millions of dollars higher. But now we've run into all this infrastructure issue with the stadium and the fact that we don't have the parking, we don't have the people moving, and they knew that going in. So they thought they would have this SJR 14 coming along at just the right time to basically loop back in the bond, which they told us was tourism-based, which won't be, and that the bond sunsets. It never sunsets. So look out, homeowners, because
it's coming.
It's coming.
There's nothing more permanent than a temporary tax.
That's one of those things that it's going to go down. I'll always remember that one. That's a good one.
There's nothing more permanent than a temporary tax.
Unbelievable.
It's just like the school system here. They keep passing all sorts of legislation and the marijuana legalization, and all that money was going to go to fund the schools. Well, guess what, folks? The schools are still crying poverty. The more they take in, the more they spend.
The whole education industrial complex is kind of to me, sort of a crime syndicate, because look at the injustice that we've done to the kids and to the families, being last in all 50 states in education. But only 25% of our kids are graduating with a D or better. That means 75% graduating with less than a D.
Frightful.
Yes. And the standards are so much lower. When I went to school in the 70s, we knew our multiplication tables coming out of third grade. Today, they don't know them going into seventh grade. So,
Scary.
yes, so we've got a huge population of kids that, I think we really need to seriously consider the value of skilled workforce and go down that road, because academically, we're just not, as a state, prepared to send our children to meaningful STEM careers and these other, avenues of...
Fortunately, we have California, which is 4 or 5 hours away, where they can draw on some of their skilled workers.
Mm-hmm.
Because when you look at these mega casinos and hotels and the stadium, they're complex structures, and you need a lot of manpower to build them.
Yeah, but the issue on the stadium is that it's a public project and that they used prevailing wage to build it, which means that it costs the taxpayers double. So the whole process of infrastructure and, publicly funded infrastructure needs to be addressed along with the prevailing wage and the Davis-Bacon Act and all of that.
There are so many problems facing us.
There is.
That I know in my lifetime I'll never see them corrected. Now, one of the things, getting back to homeowner association abuses, there is a requirement in statute, and it's been there for quite a while, is that the Common Interest Community Commission shall create a regulation giving due process to homeowners. And it has not happened. When I was one of the commissioners, I introduced a regulation. I got the legislative branch to write the regulation, and it was submitted, and there are 7 members on that commission, 3 of which are from the HOA industry. And there were a lot of people from the industry sitting in the gallery. They fought that regulation, and they didn't want any part of it because...
We'll be back in a second, and we'll find out what it is.
AM 1016 Las Vegas.
Hey, and this is Denise Mraz with Vegas Views and promoting peace through constitutional truth, and we're here with Jonathan Friedrich for Assembly District 10. You're running for the 4th time?
4th time.
And you...
I don't give up.
And you're writing a book about HOA corruption, and it's called The Fraud at Rancho Bel Air?
Rancho Bel Air. This was first-hand experience that I suffered based upon a corrupt HOA board.
Now, you've been a non-paid lobbyist in Carson City
That's
for
correct.
over 10 years.
Close to it.
And I'm a non-paid lobbyist as well, and I've been working on the vaccine issue and not having mandated vaccines, but you have really focused on this HOA corruption, and when you started on this journey, it was because of your personal experience, but...
Actually, it started before.
Oh, tell us about the start of that.
I heard about these horror stories that go on in these HOAs. And I said, this is wrong. These people, most of them, have no idea the statutes. And I got a copy of them, and I reviewed them. And the more I read and the more I experienced, the more upset I was.
So you were upset because in an HOA, these contracts essentially remove the homeowner's private property rights and put them in the HOA?
When you move into an HOA, as I said before, you have given away your constitutional rights, which is even worse. And my website is hoacorruption.com, and what it does is it lists a lot of cases that have happened to other homeowners in Las Vegas. And hopefully, if people go to the website, They can see what it's like living in one. Now, why do they keep building them? The municipalities like them, especially the gated ones.
Well,
Because now,
they have a big savings on the
that's exactly
administrative
right.
infrastructure.
The municipality does not have to maintain the roads or the street lighting.
Right. And then also with the fees that can be generated from them, then that is actually partially profiting the county.
Not really.
But in the case of the Queensgate uh, high rises, it did, right? Because of
I'm not familiar
the
with that battle.
well, that was right now in Queensgate or Queensridge, they had the golf course, but the homeowners' contract stated that at any time the golf course could be sold and they could build a high rise. And this
Yeah,
was,
okay, now I know what you're
remember
talking
that?
about. Yeah,
Yeah, and it was going to benefit the city because then obviously you have more income
taxes go up.
tax and, and then there's more fees and there's lots of benefits to them for profiting for that kind of thing.
Yes.
So, they do make more money because they haven't put out the tax basis to create that income, but then they're generating the income.
The more money municipalities or government takes in, the more they spend.
Mm-hmm.
And who subsidizes this? The homeowners.
Yes.
What happened to the retirees? Now, I do have to be honest and tell you that prior to moving here, I lived in a little village called Old Westbury on Long Island in New York.
Mm-hmm.
And I had a lovely home there. I was on almost a little over an acre of land. And why did I move? Because when the taxes got to $24,100 a year, I said enough.
Mm-hmm.
And rather than move to Florida, which the taxes are not that cheap at, Vegas and Nevada has very low real estate taxes.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what has drawn a large number of retirees and people to this state. Because they can't afford these high real estate taxes.
Mm-hmm. But then the HOAs, I mean, in Summerlin, you also have SIDS and LIDs, and then you have the HOAs, and there's more fees involved than what you would think.
There's never an end, and the
Mm-hmm.
fees never go down.
Mm-hmm.
It's like taxes. They never go down,
Mm-hmm.
despite what the politicians tell you.
Sure. Well, I'd love to find out a little bit more about your platform and what you're going to do on the other aspects of legislation. I mean, everybody's got on their mind healthcare, education, there's infrastructure. There's also this great question, if another sports team came in, would you be amenable to the public funding another stadium?
Absolutely not. And why?
Mm-hmm.
Because we, the public, are not benefiting from it. If government builds a road and pays for it with taxes or a bond issue, we use that road.
Right.
We're benefiting. But if I don't go to a football game or a basketball game or a baseball game, I'm not benefiting. If these teams that generate a lot of money for themselves and they charge a lot to go to them, if they can't afford to finance it, then don't come here and don't build it.
A great example of this would be the Raiders had their practice field built in Henderson. They were sold the acreage by the city of Henderson for, I think, 25% of the market rate, and that was just 2 years ago. They haven't even finished the practice field, but they have now sold it to a holding company. They're leasing it back, and they sold it for 7 times what they paid for. So they ripped off the taxpayers for over $100,000.
If that's all, they were lucky.
I mean, 100 million, I'm
Oh,
sorry,
100
100 million. And, we have got to stop this. There's all kinds of fraud when the government uses our tax funds to supplement these projects, and then, later on they
Use
go
the money for public works.
Yes.
that benefit all of us, not the few.
Well, how would you handle the healthcare situation? Right now, we have some of our biggest issues in Nevada is fragmented healthcare for cancer care. We have, would you believe with this COVID virus that if you're 65 or older, your your dental services were cut? You can't get dental services. I just saw that today.
I've heard about visits to the dentist were forbidden for a while.
Yeah,
Healthcare is a very complicated situation, and then you've got the healthcare industry in the middle of it that want to make it better for themselves and enrich themselves. I was asked about if I was elected, what would I do to the rural areas in Nevada to provide health care to them? Hospitals are extremely expensive to build.
they are.
They're even more expensive to run. I believe there was one in Pahrump that closed.
They still have one hospital there, but it's very limited, and they had closed certain services like delivering babies. And, so their maternity ward closed. I don't believe they have cancer care there. It's really limited.
What I had suggested was for non-major issues, put in mobile care buses, outfit them to do x-rays, simple procedures, and if it's a major issue, then you've got to travel to a legitimate medical center.
Right.
But at least those people in the outlying rural areas will get some medical relief.
Well, Mesquite had the same problem. They had a maternity ward there, but let's look at the mandate by President Trump. So on October 9th, he signed a mandate that all illegal people here cannot use our healthcare services unless they can pay for them. They have been bankrupting medical center after medical center because they used the care for free. Then there was no opportunity for the medical center to bill for it, and they went out of business. That's what happened in Mesquite. They had so many maternity deliveries to illegals, they just shut down the whole maternity ward because they could no longer fund it for the few people who were paying. So, that's a case where citizens have been really hurt by the sanctuary, thinking and policies of Clark County. What do you think about sanctuary?
There are different facets to it. One is round them up and send them home. Now, if you've got dreamers, the children, they did not have a choice. They were brought here. We, the taxpayers, have spent money to educate them and possibly provide medical care for them, and in some cases, welfare for them. We're not a social or socialistic society. We're turning into one.
Right.
Let them stay. Let them become employees. Let them pay taxes to pay back for all the benefits they've received.
But how would you set about restitution? Essentially what you're talking about is restitution. How would you implement such a thing with Dreamers?
Just by the fact that they're working and they're paying taxes.
So you would charge them an extra tax?
No. It would be too complicated. The possibility is if you did charge them a surcharge, they might go home. But then again, this is their home. They've grown up here. So it's a major problem. Look, Washington has not been able to solve this problem. They've tried. They can't figure out a equitable solution.
Well, what other areas do you see yourself being, maybe, let's say you make it in November,
From
and I'm
your
hoping
lips
you
to
do.
the ballot box.
Yeah. what kind of committees would you like to be on? What change do you want to affect?
The judiciary,
Judicial reform.
it deals with court reform. It deals with the HOAs and maybe transportation. I don't want to be, I don't have expertise in everything, and I don't want to cut myself too thin, and I'd be more effective on less than more.
Sure. Well, I think your personal experience, if we could just get this HOA situation straightened out, that would be,
It will never happen, and I'll tell you why.
what do you think we can accomplish?
From past experience, the committees up there in Carson City do not want to deal with HOA bills. And last session, I think there were only a couple. I mean, some years, I remember Allison Copany, who was a former state senator, introduced eight bills, and they all went down in flames. And they were bad. They were bad bills because I was up there as a non-paid lobbyist fighting them. And she worked for an HOA organization.
Oh.
Conflict of interest? Well, you can draw your own conclusion. But what I do want to see is a due process,
Well,
where if you're brought to a HOA board hearing, you're allowed to confront your accuser. You want to see evidence. You want an attorney if you can pay for it. And you have the right to fight it.
well, HOAs are corporations.
That's right.
So really, in a sense, this should be in business court because the business court deals with corporations. So couldn't we have an HOA court in the business court to address
I have
this?
suggested that, and it falls on deaf ears. Currently, we have a veterans court, we have a drug court,
We have family court,
family
traffic court.
But when it comes to HOA, it's as if it's a dirty word or it's the smallpox. And they run from it. Because they know there are so many problems and it never gets better.
Yeah.
And as I said at the beginning of this broadcast, there are 63 million people in America that are in them. I would say Nevada has probably, they have over 3,000, it's probably up to about 3,500 HOAs in the state now.
That's a massive number. But when you consider mobile home parks, apartment complexes, condos, single-family housing developments.
Sun City, Summerlin has over 8,000, I think 8,700 homes in it. Then you have Sun City, Anthem. These are huge, huge developments.
Inspirata,
And they're
yeah.
run,
Like
they're
Las
private
Vegas.
corporations, and they're run by homeowners. And they also have what's known as a CAM, C-A-M, Community Association Manager, who's licensed. But you have a lot of these CAMs who are dishonest.
And then how do you, create a sort of a stopgap? We are facing this in every kind of board scenario. So right now the boards serve at the pleasure of the governor. You've got the medical board, you have the dental board, the pharmacy board withholding hydroxychloroquine, and
Oh, you said it.
yeah, you've got so many different boards and they all go corrupt. I mean, I can't think of a single board that is working for the people right now. Can you?
No.
And they get paid a lot. I mean, the dental board, the 4 or 5 of them, between the 4 or 5 of them, they made over $4 million last year.
Wow. Well, as a former commissioner on the Common Interest Community Commission, I think I got $80 or $90 a day as a commissioner. We only would meet 4 times a year from anywhere from 1 day to 2 days. There may have been one where we met for 3 days, and that was it. And there is an attorney who is a state supplied by the Attorney General's office to deal with HOA issues. But really, excuse me, the thrust of my involvement would be to see HOA reform and court reform, because I have experienced the horrors of both.
Well, I'd love to see it too. And I think the flurry of lawsuits coming out on our state government regarding the COVID crisis is going to really be bringing a lot more of this to light. And there'll be more FOIA requests, there'll be more documents floating around, there'll be more discovery, there'll be more investigations. I myself filed with Attorney General Barr last week a request for a statement of interest from the from Barr on the civil liberties issues surrounding the COVID-19 virus. Now, he put out in a memo on April 27th that he was willing to review these cases for statement of interest on infraction over civil liberties, infractions. And so I did put that letter out when we, as the Recall Sisolak campaign, filed an injunction to get more time to collect signatures because of the COVID-19 virus. And in the injunction, there were a lot of allegations, mostly against Secretary of State Barbara Sagaski. And she had, according to the injunction, set herself up for many types of, I'll call it felonies, that just plain and simple. These are things that you can be arrested for, and they were very egregious charges. But we'll see if we get the statement of interest or not, even though the case was already denied by the Nevada Supreme Court.
This is the recall of Sisolak?
Yeah, they wanted an extension. But when you read through the injunction, there's a lot of, I'll call it allegations against the Secretary of State for election fraud and other things surrounding this case. So who knows if we'll get the statement of interest, even though it got closed, which means it would have to be reopened. But an Obama-appointed judge made sure that within 24 hours of this case being brought forth, it was on his docket, and then 2 days later he heard it and he denied it. But all their cases take 3 to 5 years to be heard. This one's heard in 48 hours.
My court,
Okay.
my court case rambled on for 4 years.
Wow.
And it was really a very simple case. But everybody said, no, it's complicated. They made it complicated.
Yeah.
Was I or was I not a member of the association? Eventually, the judge ruled, no, he's not. And then we moved to the next step. And each time, it took forever.
Here, move your chair a little bit closer to me. There you go.
It took forever to adjudicate this case.
Which it shouldn't have. And, that's a whole nother thing. I think we need a speedy trial and a speedy solution regulation to these things, because they can drag on. And not only are they mentally and physically and financially exhausting
And demanding.
but then additionally, when they are allowed to drag on like that, the facts can change, because
You lose witnesses.
you lose the opportunity to adjudicate certain parts of the case. And like, let's say you have to wait a year or two for your case to come up in a trial. Now part of your due process has been eroded.
Eliminated. I was very lucky. One of my key witnesses has, since the trial, passed away.
Oh my.
So I was lucky, and he happened to be an original owner. And he knew what was going on from the get-go. And he was one of the people that was I was told was grandfathered out. But he was never in.
Oh wow. Well, we've got a few interesting things going on, and if you do make it across the finish line in November, we would love for you to pay attention to it. And one of them is the right to assemble, right to travel, right to worship, and the whole, I'll call it, group of 10 limitation that was foisted upon us by our tyrant governor. We know that our civil liberties clearly state that we have a right to assemble. And, kind of in the you do me, I'll do, we everyone's doing their own personal protocol, right? For COVID-19, they should have been. Instead, the federal government only had guidelines, but communist states like ours made them into regulations. And it was just an oppression of the people to stop church communities from meeting, to eliminate their ability to foster goodwill and mental health and spiritual health to their constituents. And, there's lots of things going on right now in the world that I never thought I'd see.
Well, who realized that this virus would spread throughout the entire world as quick as it did?
But on the other hand, in 2012, I've got the NIH documents on my blog, and I screenshotted them. They added the SARS virus to the flu shot in 2012. That's absolutely documented.
Uh-huh.
And this was all done through Gates Foundation, CDC, WHO, and all of the players, I'll call them the bad actors involved with the situation. Part of it was to depopulate the people. The other part was to provide a process that could then be tied to what they're now calling contract tracing, which is you and I are sitting here talking, then one of us gets COVID. Well, you can't get COVID, I can't get COVID. The flu shot involved the certificate of vaccine identification, which means COVID, and you had to get it only if you got a flu shot. You can't give me the virus, I can't give you the virus. It's only in you if you got the flu shot. But
I'm glad I've never had a flu shot.
Yeah, and Trump has said to us how many times over the past 2 months, he never got a flu shot, don't get the flu shot. He's told us many times. But he had started saying that a long time ago. In fact, on September 19th, 2019, he had seized the CDC with the DOJ and the DOD because he knew what was coming. So he's on to them, but we need legislators like you to flesh out our defense, because we're finding ourselves in a world where we have to defend ourselves against our governors and our state legislatures and all of our NRS tyranny that we have.
It's a constant battle.
Yeah, and who would have thought that we had to fight our own government for our own rights? But
Well, Ronald Reagan said, government is not the solution, government is the problem.
it is.
If I said that right.
Yeah, yeah. And when God left government, all hell broke loose, right? So I think in Nevada, we're kind of a battleground or ground zero for a lot of these things happening, because the Chinese expansionism here was allowed to overtake a lot of our free enterprise, and resorts world is coming on, and lots of other things. So we're going to be wrapping up here in 1 minute, but I just wanted to say, what is your website? HOAcorruption.com?
That's it, HOAcorruption.com.
Mm-hmm.
And the very top link is an interview of me right
Nice.
after I had won in the Supreme Court.
And congratulations, by the way, but it's really a bittersweet thing. So this is
You
Denise
want to take
Mraz.
on the HOA? You better have a fat checkbook.
Denise here at KKVV and Vegas Views, and we're pursuing peace through constitutional truth. And if you want to reach out to us and perhaps your congregation, righttoworship.com, that's what you need to go to and see us there, and we'll see you there. Thanks so much.